Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, why you say? I mean, you seem very thankful that we're having it. Where's that come from?
I'm glad to be. Look, most people think I'm dead. I'm glad to be anywhere. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
This isn't.
An AOL co-starred in the movie. So.
This is an incredible documentary. I love this film so much. I think
Thanks.
I tweeted at you because I had interviewed you at Sundance without seeing the movie because you're doing like 15 interviews a day there. You can't see all the movies. And I was just kind of like, oh, you made a documentary about a comedian. You must love this comic. And you guys kind of sat there the whole time. And then I go watch the movie, and it's this heart-rendering exploration about not just this comedian, but this truth teller, this man who fought power, fought parts of his life. And it's absolutely stunning and beautiful.
Oh, thanks,
and I
man.
think I tweeted at you, sorry.
Yeah. No, you said that you hate yourself, and I tweeted back, call me lucky is not about hating yourself, so please don't, and it's the movie is about. It is about a comedian that I talk as if you're not around. It's about this guy who I love dearly, and a brilliant political satirist. And it's also about him as an adult dealing with rapes that he suffered, he was a victim of as a child, and the process of him going through that healing, and in the meantime helping other folks with it.
Barry, when did you realize going through that healing, after you sort of recovered the trauma that you experienced, when did you realize that part of the healing process for you would kind of be forever speaking up for others and about yourself?
Well, part of what I do is speak up for others. A lot of what I do is speak to others one-on-one. And I think if you go through anything and you've recovered from, when you begin to recover and heal, you begin, when you help other people who aren't as far along as you get this benefit, you realize how far you've come, and then you want to try to at least bring the people as far as you've gotten at that point, and it's a chain. Everybody sort of pulls together and moves along, and you get out of your own way. You don't become someone who's looking to borrow insult from everyone and everything that happens. There's a lot of stuff about triggers I hear about these days, and I did an interview a couple of weeks ago, my friend Sam Cedar's podcast, and about 4 people told me, well, there should have been a trigger warning. Well, I said, as Sam said, well, I don't want to give away what the movie's about. I go, look, it isn't that kind of movie. People should know it largely hinges on the fact that I survived rapes as a 4-year-old. And someone, there should have been a trigger warning on that. And I go, what do you think it was when I said people shouldn't be surprised? These people should know that it largely hinges on, what the fuck do you think that is? But I know how you feel about triggers because I get triggered by unjust discipline. But this stuff where everybody else is supposed to think in terms of you all the time just gives people a reason to feel persecuted and screwed over all the time, when in fact everybody in the world goes through different things and tough things, and you should remember that, and that because you shouldn't be so narcissistic as to think everybody should be thinking in terms of you all the time. That's the kind of behavior that should be left to the perpetrators, I don't need to be. When people are choppy and in a rough shape, you keep them and you protect them, and you move. And then as they move along, you realize, okay, the world isn't based around you. You're just part. Don't take life personally. Just personally live in it. And that's, it took me a long time to be able to say that inarticulately, but
that might be my favorite quote that I've heard in a really long time. Don't take life personally, just personally live it. If I had a pad, I would write that down. Can somebody write that down?
Is there some recording device here or something?
I make a lot of money on coffee mugs by following him around.
Bobcat, let's go back to the beginning and maybe work our way through it a little bit. You met Barry because you started performing at his comedy club, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Syracuse, New York, with Tom Kenny. I don't want to name drop the voice of SpongeBob.
Also, one of the great members of Mr. Show with Bob and David.
Mr. Show, yeah. And also the Ice King on. We could go on and on with his
What's
resume.
the Ice King?
On Adventure Time.
Oh yes.
So,
I
so,
love Tom. I have no idea what that even means.
so Tom and I were high schoolers, and Barry was doing a show in Skinny Atlas, open mic that worked every week. And we answered this ad looking for comedians, but he didn't know that we were children. And we showed up. And
How old were you again?
I was 16. Tom was 15. In my mind, I'm sure Tom Kenny just tried to make his voice sound like, because even back then he was great at voices. Yeah. I'm sure he's like, I think a really old guy or Bullwinkle is coming to the show tonight. But so we walked in the door. I remember the first time I saw Barry. He's on stage. He would write a new act every week because the same crowd would come. But later on, that was the genesis. You know, his act always was from the headlines of the day, and. I just remember Barry sitting on stage, and it was like the Wizard of Oz. You know, we're looking at this guy, and he's looking at us, and then he said, the fucking kiddie core's here. that was the icebreaker.
Yeah. So just to see how you rolled with that, and they were great. They were really young. I mean, they were extraordinarily young, and they get on stage, and they're these trenchant, really funny, biting, you know, a lot of social smacking, making fun of before anyone even came up with the term cult of personality. They were dumping all over it, and I go, these kids are great. But then they get off stage and they're asking me for advice on how to get prom dates. So it was like really dear.
Yeah, it really was true. I think this girl likes me. Wait, I got to go on. So. Yeah, my act back then was kind of the character people knew me, but I would be doing stuff like I'd read a Dear John letter and then just cry the whole time and then go back to trying to do a nightclub act. I go, my wife is so fat, you know. How fat is she? I just told you I don't even have a girlfriend, you know. And
were you surprised that this character that you were doing, which was, you know, inspired by Andy Kaufman and inspired by sort of conceptual comics in many ways, and in certain ways confronting the audience with something that they weren't expecting, was sort of adopted and beloved by the mainstream for a little while?
Yeah, it was weird. You know, this persona was basically me acting out how terrified I was. I mean, this audience is really young. A lot of you weren't born when I was relevant, but trust me, I was really big in the 80s. And the persona was...
Hot to trot, people.
H to the T. I ended up... you know, I was doing this persona, and it was like a guy who was terrified, and I was terrified, and, you know... but what happened was, it's really funny that as a young man, I was willing to... co-op myself, you know. I had the career most people have at the end of the career at the beginning. You know, I was in things and stuff that I wasn't so crazy about. And I know people do have fond memories of these movies I was in, you know. I run into people, usually they want to tell me how tall they were. I don't know what that's about. It's usually bros, like, dude, I was this big when I saw you. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. How
As
big
if
were
you're
you?
like a family member who's going to register that somehow.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. And then they'll ask me if I remember me a lot. They go, remember you were in that movie? Okay, you got to give me a little more. Remember with the horse? Oh, yeah, Hot to Trot. Remember the movie with Whoopi Goldberg? Yeah, Burger. Remember? It's like, yeah, I remember all of them. I haven't had head trauma. I'm right there with you, man. But so I honestly think I would have worked a little harder on Police Academy had I known I'd be talking about them 30 years later.
Do you think, so, you know, after you sort of, I don't want to say abandon this character, but realize that you don't really want to do it anymore, it's not really living up to its potential for you personally or spiritually, and you decide to start making films, you know, you make these three like incredible cult films that people just love. God Bless America, World's Best Dad with Robin Williams, really phenomenal films. What made you want to do a documentary? And did the documentary idea come first, or did doing something with Barry come first?
No, and actually the genesis was, you know, when Barry, I'll address the elephant in the room. You know, Barry disclosed his rapes on stage, actually, and the process of him going into healing and recovery, while he was online, he found that there was pedophiles exchanging child pornography in AOL's chat rooms. And so he went to AOL, and they didn't do anything. All of a sudden, my mic drops out. And then, that was great. Ladies and gentlemen, Bobcat Goldthwait, Barry Crimmins. And then he went to the law enforcement, the police in the dock. The guy says we didn't have computers even in our room. So Barry got all this evidence, and then he appeared at a judiciary hearing on the floor of the Senate and kind of pointed out that AOL better get their act together. So the article that Barry wrote about this whole event was in the Boston Phoenix, and it was really well written. It was really funny. And even though he's a guy I admire and love, and he's my mentor and hero, although he doesn't like that word, it was a story I wanted to do because it read like a Frank Capra movie, this little guy going up against this big giant. So I thought I'd make the movie with someone playing Barry.
Who did you imagine playing Barry?
Well,
Vic Tayback?
yeah.
We lost Vic.
So that just set the movie back. So then, Robin Williams was my best pal, and I think it wasn't even that secret. I kind of thought of him, and he and I talked a little bit about it, but getting the script in shape, and it went back and forth, and Robin was a fan of Barry's, and he knew Barry's story, and he suggested that I do it as a documentary, and he actually that was not that long ago. Is February 2014, and so he gave the initial money that started us making the movie. And he was funny because he was just like, this is gonna go to Sundance, and I was like, and then it ended up premiering in the same theater that World's Greatest Dad premiered at Sundance. And I had the same experience because I sat with Robin, and I never showed him World's Greatest Dad, and I never showed him a frame of this movie until he saw it.
Till the Sundance premiere?
Yeah.
How did you respond to seeing the film for the first time?
Well, the first time, because I still have what you call PTSD, although it's not a problem most of the time. But walking into the theater, I'm a little tense, and on the way in, someone nailed me with like a line drive snowball from behind, and it set me off. I couldn't really breathe that well or anything, and then we show up, and there's this phalanx of media there and whatever, and it's like, hi, all right. So I kind of missed it the first time I saw it, but the next couple times I realized, but I knew well enough that Bob did a great job the first time, but I picked up a lot more details the second two. And that almost, like, stuff like that doesn't happen to me. I don't end up but that's the kind of thing that you get stuck with the rest of your life, when you suffer trauma.
Did you feel like going into the film that you had a legacy, or did the film itself and what Bob captured make you feel like you have a legacy, that there's a legacy that you are leaving behind or that you have currently?
Well, I think we should all, no matter what we do, think in terms of the impact down the road, but not in some sort of egotistical way, but just like someone might just find a little something you did and take a little inspiration from it. And at a time in the future that's even more stupid than things are now, they might get a little shot in the arm for it. And that was always my plan. And then global warming came along, and maybe there won't be a posterity. Sorry, kids. But anyway, play to the age is not the age, but not in an egotistical way, in a way that you might help one person. And one person might take inspiration. They're like, this was really stupid then, but this person stood up and did something, or said this, or drew this conclusion that we all know is true, because 100 years later, you can talk about how dumb things were 100 years ago. You just can't talk about how dumb things are now.
Absolutely. And, in 1995, we brought it up. You did expose these sort of pedophile rings that were rampant through online culture and in AOL chat rooms. And they're sort of still happening now with different forms of technology.
Specifically. And I was on AOL. And AOL didn't really encourage you to go out to the rest of the internet because they implied it was sort of dangerous out there. So I wrote them. And I know it's a different company now, and there's different people in charge, and
Oh, absolutely. You're
Duly noted. But I would have gotten rid of the fucking name myself. It's part of your legacy. I'm sorry, it's the brand. Isn't that the thing you guys care about? Anyway, I helped with the branding early. And kind of proud of it. The 10 grand I spent investigating, and cleaning up your service in those days, I wouldn't, it would be a wonderful gesture if you got one of those big checks.
like a big Pricewaterhouse
I
clearinghouse.
would love it. Wouldn't that be a great thing, too? Yeah, it really would be. 10 grand in 1995 money, so you could prorate that. But... many a truth is said in jest, isn't it? So, yeah. But anyway, they just played it dumb, and they were making a lot of money. But back in those days, if you're online for more than 12 or whatever hours a month, they would charge you an hourly rate. So it'd be $3 or $4 an hour. And these people in these, and then there was like wood-burning modems in those days, so it took an hour to upload one picture. So these people all had $1,000, $1,200 a month bills, and AOL's playing it dumb with me about what's going on. And I just kept saying, and I was like, did you ever see The Simpsons where Marge Simpson is like pissed at Itchy and Scratchy? I was Marge Simpson in this thing where they eventually, they ruin Itchy and Scratchy, but, then Itchy and Scratchy comes back. It's similar to that. But I ended up, my friend Lana Lawrence knew people in Washington, and people were interested, and they were upset about pornography on the internet, and it was sort of like, my son, 16-year-old son, saw the Playmate of the Month, and it was like, oh no. So they brought me in because they did this hearing on pornography on the internet, and if I had been there, you would have heard the word child, and you would have heard the word pornography, but you wouldn't have heard it in a row. But for 6-7 months I was on in these chat rooms on AOL, and you just come into the room in these member-created rooms, and they just presumed you're in on it, and without even solicitation, they sent you child pornography. Now, you hear this term kiddie porn and so on, it sounds like at the Bunny Hill or something, but it's pictures, photographic evidence of sexual assaults and rapes and exploitation of little dear kids who, and what happens to them afterwards. You see them, you see the humanity leaving their eyes. And I got madder and madder. And then finally, and AOL just played it dumb with me. And finally, a couple days before they figured out I was going to be at the hearing, maybe we should talk now. I'm going to see you in Washington. And I did. And they sent this lawyer out who was and you see this in the movie, and they gave him my testimony. They didn't give me his testimony. His testimony was in response to mine, which is
The Senate did. The Senate gave.
Yeah, somebody leaked my testimony to him. Nobody, and his was all in response to mine. But my case was airtight enough that I would say, and you can see in the movie, but basically I carried the day. And then eventually the people that they're gone now. But somebody made some decision. I mean, it was his corporation. So, you're responsible.
I don't know if it was in direct correlation with your testimony, but I know that AOL banded together with a number of the leading technology companies, and they sort of created new software to find ways to go after.
You don't know if it had anything to do with what I did or not, humiliating them
I said most likely in correlation
I think it had some. I don't want to blow my own horn too much here. But
you want me to do
right
it?
Right afterward. I know, but it was different people then.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here if it was the same people. I promise you. I would not be here. But I was really annoyed at the time I was outraged. And I should have been. If anyone saw what I saw happening to these kids, you would have been outraged too. And it was a brand new thing. It wasn't even video in those days. It was just pictures, but it was like people sending you a picture. And that this happened half an hour ago, and some little kid getting raped. Half an hour ago, and you're looking at a little kid with red curly hair getting raped by a guy with red curly hair, and then the AOL, the attorney comes in and says, well, we think parental software can handle it a lot. It's like parents are sometimes the perpetrators, okay? So parental software does nothing for that, okay? So that was the dispute with them, but I think it's great that in its new form that this organization brings me in and lets me tell that story.
I'm honored personally to have you in, and what you did is incredible.
I'm imagining right now a laser dot showing up on your head and a bullet tearing through your skull as we sit here.
We just hear this sound. Choon!
And when all's said and done,
Choon! The last thing he heard was choon. Yeah.
continue.
I think a bullet would probably get through that thing.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. It would just be out and out.
Yeah.
I feel like this whole episode is going to just turn into Exhibit A soon.
No, it's great because we were looking at all the press we had to do, and some stand out more than others.
Yeah, we go, AOL. Well, this ought to be interesting. You've seen the movie, right?
And it has been.
Yes. Yeah.
Now watch the squirm.
Yeah.
But you were great, and you came. People here are of good faith now, and I really do appreciate it.
And it does say a lot that we're here. I mean, it does say a lot.
But
getting
repaid,
I think it says,
$10,000, I'm serious about that.
I think what you've done says, honestly, less about AOL bringing you here and more about the culture in general and the culture's response to pedophile rings online, technology, how it's used, how it's taken advantage of, what child pornography is. I mean, without you, I think we wouldn't, not just AOL, but the culture itself wouldn't be where it is.
It was like the first chance for community. It wasn't like a guild for child molesters. You couldn't go to the convention. So
they closed that convention.
This is the first time they could ever really. Yeah, they could really gather and get. So it was really scary to watch this community build, and that's what I was watching, and I had to blow the whistle about it. But nowadays, at least those people have to employ a lot more subterfuge than they did. It's still going on. It's still a big problem, but at least it's more difficult.
And now we have, I would honestly say because of you, we have members of the FBI going into these rooms, using the subterfuge, going into these rooms and trying to take people down.
Every one of those that's there doesn't have time to hassle me. So it's a double benefit.
I actually, I don't know if it made the movie, but the guy, the police officer in Cleveland was saying that, the way we do things that's in the movie. We're greatly responsible for what Barry started. But what's not in the movie is he actually showed me this whole branch that they have, and he was crediting Barry at why it existed,
Unbelievable.
But I should also say that this movie is also... There's a lot of singing.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot.
It was originally going to be a musical, and we've left some of that in there.
A lot of your favorite comedians make an appearance.
It is, but I hope there is laughs there.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, even within this dark period of the movie or dark space within the movie, there are still laughs. Barry's a funny person. Like you can't help it even here.
It helps you survive.
And I think I would be doing the message of the movie and Barry a disservice if it wasn't funny, and there's nothing worse than a comedian telling you it's very funny, you should see it, I mean, but I don't know. I'm very bad at self-promotion, but I'm doing more of a hustle than I ever have because I really believe in what this movie has to say.
I'll do it for you. I love this movie. You should watch it. It's a really incredible film. And it's funny, it's very funny, and it's very moving. And now we have to take questions. Does anyone have any questions?
We look forward to answering your questions. Let me put a little more showbiz spin on that. Now we have to take questions. We got to listen to you. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. No, does anyone have any questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. When did you know comedy was your calling? How did you know comedy was your calling?
I think the comedy was... I don't know. I think the first time I got laughs was I was an altar boy, so I'd be pulling faces and stuff, and I actually, it was performing, in class. The first time I met Tom Kenny, I was being dragged out of his class by a nun that I had made cry, and then I was crying. And then she put me in his classroom, and she's like, I can't take him anymore. And so then what happened was Tom Kenny introduced himself. He thought it was really cool that I could make a nun cry. But performing then, I remember as a little boy, I was homesick. George Carlin was on the Dinah Shore show, and he was doing this poem about hair, and I didn't laugh. I just thought it was amazing. And I said to my mom, I said, "What does this guy do to make a living? What does he do for a living?" And she goes, "That's what he does for a living." And I was like, "Oh, this is great," So that's when the light went on.
Hi, I'm Bobcat. I just want to know, what did you enjoy most of directing Jimmy Kimmel's show?
A lot of folks don't know. I directed the Kimmel Show for about 3 years. Oh, cool. I'll let them know. Jim, you got a smattering. I never had a job. I started doing stand-up when I was 16. I was the janitor in my high school. I worked as a waiter a little bit, but I got on Letterman when I was 20. And having a job, showing up every day and seeing the same people, I really like that. And it was great. I miss a lot of those folks. But, ABC never really went out of their way to promote that I was their director. They didn't go, "Hey, the guy who set the Tonight Show on fire and got arrested for that? Yeah, he's driving the bus over here at ABC." They didn't really promote that too much.
Next question.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I just want to know, how could people help so this doesn't happen again?
You can help by listening to people and being aware, and not being afraid to talk about it. Like when I first started dealing with what happened to me as a child, I talked to friends about it. Some were great, like Bob, and others would say, "Oh, are you talking to anyone?" And I go, "Yeah, I thought I was talking to you." And what they mean is you got to go spend $150 or $200 an hour to talk to a shrink, and then they're going to put you on pharmaceutical dry ice and zone you out. So, you have to go through things, not around them. So if you have friends that have been through trauma of various sorts, whatever it is, understand they have to go through things and not around them. And, and hopefully it's just don't allow them to get medicated and doped up and then just so nobody has to really think about it. And the real way people get cured or get healed is by talking to others, to loving people who open their ears and hearts. And so that's what I would recommend.
Question is for Barry.
Hi.
Hi. You were honored for Artist Community Works, Artists for Social Change.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Tell us about it.
Oh, I've received several. In 1991, I got the Peace Leadership Award, and that was the year of the first Gulf War, the war we still have. And at the time, I just said, well, it was a very weak field because there weren't a lot of peace leaders running around at that point. But it feels nice in that it might encourage other people to do something. I think that we should honor people who take stands and do things. And I was also able to help a good organization, which is Community Works, which is a terrific organization that pulls together a variety of nonprofits throughout New England. And they've grown since they gave me that award, and I love those folks. I did a benefit with the great Wendy Liebman for them last year, and I hope to do another one soon.
I have one more question. One thing that's brought up in the film that's not really touched upon too much is that, you are a leftist, and at one point you're living in LA and writing for Dennis Miller.
Right.
What was that like? Was this prior to him sort of changing parties?
What are you implying? There's leftists in the Democratic Party?
Well, he's a Republican now.
You got a scoop there, brother. The great leftist, Hillary Clinton. A bigger patriarch than I'll ever be. But anyway, Miller was, he's pragmatic, so he liked good jokes. If you could figure out how to put a couple of hip references in it and whatever, you could get him to say some stuff, and then the next day he would go like, "The NRA is really mad at me," and you're like, "Oh, gee, that's too bad, Dennis."
But it's a shame. I reached out to Dennis not to sandbag him because obviously Barry and him are polar opposites politically, but Barry speaks warmly about the kindness Dennis showed him during his recovery and stuff. But I think it's just weird. I mean, And I was just really coming at him as a friend. I worked with him a bunch over the years. I mean, I did a show, I remember, it was really long ago. It was when he was a Democrat, and he was my opening act, you know. Did I ever tell you that show?
Yeah, I know.
And I'm in Atlanta, and I'm on stage, and I keep hearing, free bird, you know, free bird. And,
This is a great story.
and it just keeps going on and on, free bird. And I finally go, hey, man, Leonard Skinner's dead, all right? You guys got to let it go. There's no chicken in the breadbasket picking out dough. The South's not going to rise again. Leonard Skinner's dead. The war is over, and the slaves have been emancipated, and Leonard Skinner's dead. I remember this like this was yesterday. And I look at the bottom of the stage, and these biker-looking dudes are climbing up onto the stage, and I look at security, and no one stops them. And this is the mid-'80s, and the guys get closer to me, and around their neck are laminated passes that say, Leonard Skinner, Survivors Tour, 87. It was the surviving members of Leonard Skinner. That's why they were yelling Freebird. They had recognized them. They weren't doing it. Yeah, they weren't doing it to bust my balls. They're like, Freebird! And it was, and at the time I was doing that character, you know, I'm like, Leonard Skinner's dead. And then I go, first time I came out of character, I go, Tony, get the car. It was like suddenly I got healed in the middle of it, but yeah. But yeah, I do wish Dennis participated in it, but you know, I'm happy with all the folks that were either mentored or influenced or he gave a start to or just fans of people like Patton and Mark Maron and David Cross and Margaret Cho and you know, Stephen Wright, all these folks that showed up. It's a testament to him. It's a testament how much people believe in him.
It's incredible, yeah, the amount of comics that we have. Guys, I think that's all the time that we have left.
Again, thank the contemporary AOL for having us here.
I mean, I can't...
Thanks.
I don't think you... I appreciate that, but I think we're really honored to be able to host you and talk to you guys
And
about
thank you
this
for the
great
kind
film.
words about the movie. That's really sweet.
Well, I love the movie, guys. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you, guys.